So the Switch 2 is out, and honestly, I wish I could say I was excited. I really wanted to be excited. Like many 90s babies, I grew up on Nintendo. They were my very first gaming love. And not just the games, but the feeling of them. The wonder, the warmth, the way they pulled you into a world and made it feel like home. Ocarina of Time was the one that really awoke something in me. That opening in Kokiri Forest with the Deku Tree, riding Epona across Hyrule Field, it all felt so massive. Like a real world was tucked inside a little cartridge. And then Majora's Mask came along, and my little self had never felt such anxiety. That eerie moon, the ticking clock, the emotional side quests that made you care so much in so little time. It was the very first game that made me feel something beyond just fun. It was sad, confusing, kind of strange at times, and very deep. It wasn't just Zelda. I was obsessed with Super Mario 64, running wild through Peach's castle, jumping into paintings, discovering every secret star. That game felt like true freedom. And then there were classics like Kirby's Dream Land, Yoshi's Story, Donkey Kong 64, Star Fox, Metroid Prime, all completely different and wonderful in their own way. And every one of them had a vibe, a soul, that Nintendo spark that made it feel like you weren't just playing, you were being let in on something very special. And then my parents bought me the original DS, and just like that, the whole thing was cracked wide open for me. That's how I found Animal Crossing Wild World, and I was hooked. I spent hours in that little village, rearranging furniture, writing letters, fishing for red snappers, and visiting my best friend's town during our weekly sleepovers. Even now, just hearing the soundtrack makes me very emotional. It takes me right back to those quiet, cozy afternoons after school, all curled up with that clunky silver DS with nowhere else that I needed to be. Truly the epitome of nostalgia. I didn't know it then, but those games were helping to shape how I saw everything. Stories, characters, even myself, and for a while, it really felt like Nintendo understood how to make something that mattered. And it didn't stop there. I basically owned every major Nintendo console, starting with the N64, GameCube, Wii, DS, 3DS, even the Wii U, which in my humble opinion, was ahead of its time, by the way. But I owned all of them. And when the Switch was announced with Breath of the Wild, I was beyond excited. Like, very cringely crying at the announcement trailer excited. As a Zelda fan, it was everything I'd ever wanted in a game, and to this day, it is still one of my favorites. That launch brought back so much of the old magic, which is probably why I held on for so long, and I even wanted to work for them. Like, genuinely. I applied to corporate Nintendo PR jobs probably 15 to 20 times. I'm not even exaggerating. Back in 2019, I was pursuing PR, and when I got the opportunity to go to E3 that year, the very last E3 by the way, I actually spoke with a Nintendo PR team in person. It was magical. The Nintendo section of the event was so overwhelming and electric, and I remember thinking, this is it. This is what I want, and this is what I want to be a part of. So please, hear me out. What we are about to discuss isn't coming from someone who's out to bash Nintendo. This is coming from someone who genuinely, wholeheartedly, even at times, very cringely, loved Nintendo and their games, and really believed in what I thought they stood for. But over time, I've started to realize that maybe Nintendo isn't the company I thought they were. What I've seen over the last few years is that my nostalgia goggles have been working overtime, and they've kept me from really seeing the true nature of a company that I once held so dear to my heart. So, let's dive in. And let's start with the release of the Switch 2. It's officially out now, and sales are booming. Records are being broken, and over 3 million units were sold worldwide on release day. People are also loving Mario Kart World, and I'm genuinely very happy for them. Yes, the game looks like a lot of fun. I just wish I felt something, because more than anything, I just feel tired. At $450 or $500 if you get it bundled with Mario Kart World, this doesn't feel like a celebration of the next chapter. It feels like Nintendo seeing how far they can stretch our loyalty, how much they can charge us for something that isn't even new, just a little bit newer. And listen, I'm not here to crap on Mario Kart. I actually really like Mario Kart. I do. It's one of those comfort games that's always been there, and it's attached to so many fond memories of playing with friends and family. But even though it looks fun, when that's the flagship title for a brand new console launch, I don't know, I personally just couldn't get behind the hype. It feels kind of boring, safe, predictable. Nintendo isn't asking, hey, what's possible here? They're asking, what can we get away with? Because $80 for Mario Kart World, that's not just a new number. It's a shift in how this industry treats its players. And what surprises me, even though it shouldn't at this point, is that it's Nintendo, of all companies, ushering in this new pricing standard. This wasn't them reluctantly following a trend that I know was inevitable, but this was them leading the charge, setting a precedent, establishing $80 as the new normal, and not with some expansive, genre-pushing new experience, but with an exact game formula that we've literally seen 16 times at this point. And it makes you ask, why? Because meanwhile, I'm looking at games like Helldivers 2, Hi-Fi Rush, Lies of P, Remnant 2, Clair Obscur, Baldur's Gate 3, and so many more. Games that have real creative vision, some with massive campaigns, even some with fleshed out co-op systems, launching at or below $60. And many of these games are taking risks and really pushing boundaries, and somehow they're still finding a way to be more accessible. So when Nintendo drops a new console and leads with yet another Mario Kart at a higher price than ever before, it doesn't feel like they're honoring their legacy. It feels like they're monetizing it, like they're using it against us. Actually kind of feels like a slap in the face that stings pretty badly. And yes, to be fair, the Switch 2 is a technical upgrade. 4K visuals, better battery, smoother performance, more storage, it's all technically better on paper. But it doesn't feel like a new era. It seems like a slightly fancier version of something that we already had. And for me personally, this realization of who Nintendo is not like a sudden moment of awakening. I've quietly been stepping back from them for a while now. And not because I stopped loving their games, but because I started seeing the patterns, the choices, and the shifts. And at this point, it's pretty clear that this Switch 2 release is not just about a new price tag or a genuine attempt at launching something new, it's just another step in the same pattern that's been repeating for years. Back in the day, this used to be the company that took risks, that made magic, that redefined entire genres and invited us into something truly special. But now, kind of just seems like they're relying on the fact that we'll show up no matter what, even though they are so often very anti-consumer. It's because they know our nostalgia runs incredibly deep, and the more I've seen it, the harder it has been to unsee. Nintendo has mastered something I can only describe as weaponized nostalgia. They've turned our childhood memories into a soulless business model, and the part that really hurts is that it works. It worked on me for so long. I've been the Nintendo fangirl who's bought the remakes, re-releases, and updated ports, even though I knew deep down that what they were offering was not anything new. And looking back on it, I don't know, I guess it was because I didn't feel like I was buying a game, it felt like I was buying a memory. And Nintendo knows that. They know that we remember how it felt to blast through Alien Worlds and Metroid Prime, or how it felt to spend hours raising your perfect Nintendog like it was your actual childhood pet. They know we feel these titles in a way that goes beyond gameplay, and they have perfected the art of re-releasing titles, sometimes only mildly updated, at full price, locking legacy content behind paywalls and subscriptions, and offering nostalgia not as a gift, but as a heartless transaction. And just a quick side note that I found out while I was writing out this video. Do you want to talk about heartless? Because I just found out that Nintendo actually replaced the voice actress for Princess Peach after 18 years. And they didn't even tell her. She found out with the rest of the world when the new Mario Kart game came out. Like, that's actually insane. But anyway, to get back on track, there's always been a huge difference between celebrating fan love and exploiting it. And for me, it seems like Nintendo has lived long enough to finally see themselves become the villain. So moving on from the Switch 2 release, at some point, I started looking at how Nintendo treats the people who love their games. And what I found honestly broke my heart a little bit, because Nintendo doesn't just protect its legacy, they police it. Let's start with content creators. This is nothing new. For many years now, Nintendo has been going after them. Streamers, YouTubers, musicians, for doing what, honestly, most other gaming companies celebrate, sharing their love for the brand and its IP. Somehow, I managed to kind of turned a blind eye to most of this until the PointCrow situation. He was a YouTuber who was making these really incredible Breath of the Wild mod videos. Fun, creative, and totally original. And then one day, Nintendo claimed and struck 27 videos. No warning, no conversation, just straight up attacked. And it wasn't just his Breath of the Wild mods, it was any content that featured them, including other creators who had collaborated with him. It all got wiped out like a purge. And it made me pause because these weren't leaks and they weren't made to be malicious. It really was just fan content that was made out of love. And Nintendo really cracked down on it like it was a threat. And this was not an isolated case. One that has really stuck with me was GilvaSunner. And if you didn't know, GilvaSunner's channel used to be one of the only places online where you could find full Nintendo soundtracks. For years, Nintendo basically had these locked up very tight unless you were able to purchase a physical CD from Nintendo themselves. They weren't on Spotify, Apple Music, Nintendo's YouTube channel, no official platform to listen to any of it. And Gilva wasn't even trying to profit from this. There were no ads or monetization, just the original music uploaded for fans who wanted to relive the moments those songs came from. It was really a gift to the community. And then it was gone. Nintendo initially sent over 1,300 takedown notices, and after that, it was followed by another 2,200. The entire channel was essentially wiped out, and Gilva closed up shop. And I know this might sound a little bit dramatic, but that was kind of a big turning point for me when it came to how I viewed them. Just a little side note / confession, but as a former Disney adult who has learned the error of her ways, I feel pretty qualified to say this. Nintendo really is the Disney of gaming. They're wholesome on the surface, very full of magic and memories, but underneath, there's a very quiet, corporate, malicious control. And both companies know how to tug at your childhood heartstrings while handing out copyright strikes and ulterior motives on the side. At the time I was watching this unfold, the more I sat with what happened to GilvaSunner, the more it made me wonder, why is Nintendo's music so locked away to begin with? These soundtracks have some of the most iconic songs in gaming. They were emotional, timeless, and they were very deeply personal for so many of us. And like I said earlier, Animal Crossing Wild World was my comfort game. And yet, at the time, there was basically no way for me to go listen to it legally. It felt like Nintendo had locked away their history in a vault, and they just would not let anyone open it up. And from there, I started noticing so many other examples. Fan games getting shut down, community passion projects being wiped out, and listen, I get it, IP protection is legally within their right. But it all just felt like they were going out of their way to crack down on this, acting very aggressive, cold, and even heartless. Especially when you look around at many other companies, Sega, Capcom, Xbox, PlayStation, even some indie studios, and you see them amplifying creators, lifting them up, letting the fans be a part of the legacy. But Nintendo doesn't really do that. They continue to pull the plug again and again, and over time, I started wondering if maybe I had just been giving them the benefit of the doubt simply because I grew up loving them. So at this point, after the GilvaSunner takedown, I had already started to feel uneasy. The creator takedowns, the fan projects, the legacy content, it was all feeling a lot more controlling than caring. But the moment that truly stopped me in my tracks was when I heard the story of Gary Bowser. And I'll be honest with you, I didn't even know about any of this until I listened to an episode of Darknet Diaries, which, by the way, Jack does an incredible job explaining all of this. I'll link it in the description for you. Now, I obviously knew at this point Nintendo could be very protective of their IP, but this was on a whole other level. Gary was a part of a group called Team Executor, and what they did was build and sell mod chips, little pieces of hardware that you could install in your Nintendo consoles to run homebrew apps, custom firmware, and yes, pirated games. But people also used those mods for stuff that wasn't necessarily piracy. They used it to run backups of games they already owned, or just experiment with the system for their own personal use, things that were really never going to be available through Nintendo directly. Gary essentially became the fall guy for the entire organization, and Nintendo came down on him in a way that was very extreme. In 2020, Gary was arrested at gunpoint in the Dominican Republic and extradited to the US. By 2022, he'd been sentenced to 3 years in prison and ordered to pay $14.5 million in damages, $4.5 million in restitution, and then another $10 million from a civil suit. And after he got out early, he still owed all of it. And he started paying Nintendo back 25 to 30% of his monthly income, which at one point was just $25 a month from his prison library job. He'll basically be paying them for the rest of his life. When I heard that, my stomach dropped. I genuinely felt heartbroken for him. Yes, what he and the rest of the team were doing was illegal, and they did profit off of it, but Gary was just one man. And are we really saying the punishment fits the crime here? Because whatever legal lines were crossed, this felt less like justice and more like hatred and wrath. And not just for what he did, but for daring to even touch Nintendo's closed system. And the part that really got me with this is Nintendo tried to get Sony and Microsoft to back them up here, to join the lawsuit and make it a united front against piracy. Both companies said no. Both Sony and Xbox, billion-dollar publishers in their own right, refused to be a part of it. Even they seemed to think that it was too far. And again, I am not here to outright defend piracy, really. There's a whole conversation to be had about access, preservation, and ethics, but this felt felt incredibly cruel and predatory. Nintendo did not just want to stop Gary from what he was doing, they wanted to make him an example. And for me, this was the defining moment when I knew Nintendo was no longer the company that I had loved for decades. And if you thought Gary Bowser's case was just a one-off or a legal overreach in a rare situation, it wasn't, because not long after that, Nintendo set its sights on something much bigger and arguably much more telling. You might have already guessed it, but I'm talking about Power World. You probably remember when it blew up. A very weird, chaotic blend of Pokemon-style creature collecting and open-world survival mechanics. It was very messy, it was wild, but it was so much fun. People were very obsessed, myself included. And yes, come on, it clearly was inspired by Pokemon. That's not a secret. You could throw a spear, you could collect little pals, you ride them, you battle them. It was Pokemon adjacent, absolutely. But here's the thing. It wasn't a copy. The characters were different. The art direction, tone, many mechanics were different. It took a very familiar genre and gave it a bold, slightly unhinged twist. And for the first time in years, fans were saying, why doesn't Nintendo try stuff like this? Instead of taking that feedback in stride, instead of rising to the challenge, listening, learning, evolving, Nintendo did what they've been doing for a while now. They sued. Together with the Pokemon Company, they filed a patent infringement lawsuit against the Power World dev team. Not over character design, surprisingly, not even over branding, but over mechanics. Things like throwing a pal spear to catch creatures, using them in combat, riding them across the world. And because of all of this, the Power World team had to actually go in and change all of those features. They stripped out mechanics that players loved, not because they were unethical, but because they simply couldn't defend themselves against a legal juggernaut. And just like with the Gary Bowser case, Nintendo tried to bring other companies into the fight. Sony and Microsoft were purportedly approached to back them again here, and again, they declined. They did not want to be a part of it. And all of this says a lot, because this could have been a big moment for Nintendo, a wake-up call, an opportunity for them to ask, what is it that people are responding to? Why are they so excited about this? What can we learn from this? But instead of innovation, they chose litigation. And to me, it was not a stand for creativity or IP protection. The Pokemon formula has been around for literally 30 years. We all know what it is and where it comes from. And Power World was not going to change that. No. This was Nintendo being a bully and swinging at anything that threatened the comfort of their complacency. They had an opportunity to grow, to evolve, to take advantage of someone already laying the groundwork for them, but instead, they chose violence. And after everything, the creator takedowns, the lawsuits, the silencing of innovation, you think maybe Nintendo would at least try to get one thing right. Their legacy. I remember when Nintendo Online was first announced. It sounded like such a win, a way to legally revisit classic titles, play old favorites, dive back into the library that built up this brand. And at first, I was so hopeful, but the reality has been frustrating at best. Games get added randomly. Some months it's not much. Other months, it's one obscure NES title no one really asked for. Entire consoles like Game Boy Advance or N64 still feel incomplete, and sometimes titles will just disappear without warning or explanation. They're just gone. And now, with the launch of the Switch 2, I thought maybe they would just try to clean things up a bit. GameCube has finally joined the retro lineup, which is very awesome, but they only added 3 games at launch: Wind Waker, Soul Calibur 2, and F-Zero GX. Like, yeah, that's a cool trio, I guess, but it's also pretty bare bones for a console with so many legendary titles. And yes, I know more are coming, but why launch with so few? Why not take the easy win here and give your fans what they've been begging you for years? Beyond the catalog, the performance isn't always there either. Sometimes there's lag, some games have awkward control schemes, others don't support cloud saves. It doesn't really feel like a premium service. It feels like something Nintendo begrudgingly maintains, and definitely not something that they can be proud of. The thing is I've always wanted to support something like this. I actually am very happy to pay to play these games legally. I want to revisit the titles that shaped me in a clean, easy way, but Nintendo has made it so hard. It's like they're sitting on this treasure trove of nostalgia, this very beautiful, powerful legacy, and instead of sharing it or celebrating it with us, they keep it to themselves and withhold it. They kind of hold it over us like drugs, honestly, banking on the fact that we'll continue to play the part of the willing addicts who will be so happy for even the tiniest drop. It really is heartbreaking, but at this point, I'm not even really mad about it. I'm just tired and maybe still a little bit sad. Now again, to be clear, this video is not meant to shame anybody. If you bought the Switch 2 or you're a part of Nintendo Online and you're loving it, I think that's great. Truly, I am not here to steal joy away from anyone. This video really is just to talk about how I can't ignore how much my own relationship with Nintendo has changed over the years. And I don't love them anymore. Not the company, not like I used to. And that's difficult to say out loud because I grew up on these games. I spent summers chasing stars in Mario 64, winters decorating my Animal Crossing home, racing my siblings in Mario Kart, riding Epona across Hyrule Field like it was the most magical thing in the world. And for me, these were not just games. They were a part of my childhood. And that's why all of this hurts so much, because the company that once led with a full heart and love for gaming feels like it's running on autopilot, giving us the absolute bare minimum. Comfortable, safe, lazy, greedy. We're getting less and paying more. And look, the industry as a whole is a bit of a mess right now, but it's still fair for us to ask for better, to feel valued as customers, to want these companies to care. And for a long time, I really believed that Nintendo did, that they were different, that they stood for something. But now it's hard to see how that could still be true. I always joke that my relationship with Nintendo is super toxic because even after all of this, even after how I've seen how they treat their consumers and fans, part of me still hopes that they'll change because they could. It really would be so easy. If they wanted to, they could be the company that supports creators instead of silencing them, shares their legacy instead of locking it away, prioritizes joy over control, and evolves instead of punishing innovation. I really would love nothing more than to fall back in love with them. But right now, it just seems like Nintendo is going to keep being Nintendo, just very stuck and too happy to stay that way. The love that I once had for them was so real and the magic really mattered. But the company behind that magic, it feels further away than ever. If you made it to the end of this video, seriously, thank you so much. And I would love to hear your story. What made you fall in love with Nintendo? Are you still in love with them? Or have you also had a bit of a breakup with them like me? Let me know in the comments. And thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.